Welcome to poetrypodcentral. She was born Marguerite Johnson in St. Louis, Missouri in 1928. She would go on to become a singer, a dancer, an actress, a civil rights activist, a playwright, a filmmaker, an educator, and one of the most celebrated poets in American history. But before all of that, before the stages and the standing ovations and the presidential inaugurations, there was a little girl in Arkansas who stopped speaking entirely. And what happened next is one of the most extraordinary stories literature has ever produced. This is the life of Maya Angelou. When Angelou was just 7 years old, she suffered a trauma so devastating that she stopped speaking. She remained mute for nearly 5 years. She later wrote about those years in her most famous work, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, with an honesty so raw and so precise that it changed how America told its own story. But here is what is remarkable about those years of silence. She did not waste them. She read everything she could find. She read Langston Hughes, W.E.B. Du Bois, Paul Laurence Dunbar, Shakespeare, Dickens, and Poe. She was building in silence the most extraordinary literary mind of her generation. When Angelou was 12 and a half, an educated African American woman named Mrs. Flowers finally got her to speak again. Mrs. Flowers emphasized the importance of the spoken word and instilled in her a love of poetry. Angelou later described that moment as one of the most important of her entire life. The girl who had stopped speaking graduated at the top of her 8th grade class. At 17, Angelou graduated from high school and gave birth to her son Guy. To support them both, she became the first African American and first female streetcar conductor in San Francisco. She worked as a cook, a dancer in nightclubs, a fry cook in hamburger joints, and a dinner cook in a Creole restaurant. She later wrote, I also once had a job in a mechanic's shop, taking the paint off cars with my hands. She was not yet a poet, she was something more complicated, a survivor learning what the world was made up of. In the late 1950s, Angelou joined the Harlem Writers Guild in New York and met James Baldwin and other important writers of her time. It was during this period that she heard Dr. Martin Luther King speak for the first time. Inspired by his message, she was offered and accepted a position as the Northern Coordinator for Dr. King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference. She marched, she organized, she fought, and she wrote. In 1978, a poem appeared in Cosmopolitan magazine that would change everything. Still I Rise. The words that became a rallying cry for generations of readers across the world. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. The poem is considered one of the most powerful celebrations of resilience in the English language. It speaks in the voice of every person who has ever been pushed down, dismissed, or silenced and refused to stay down. For Angelou, it was deeply personal. The silence of her childhood, the hardship of her early years, the civil rights struggle she had lived and fought through, all of it was in those lines. Still I Rise did not just resonate, it became an anthem. It was read at funerals and graduations, it was quoted in courtrooms and churches, it was carried on protest signs, it was whispered in hospital rooms. It became, as Angelou had written of all great poetry, a way of speaking in the first person singular about the first person plural, always saying I, meaning we. In the same year, Angelou published another poem that would define her, Phenomenal Woman. In it, she described the physical and spiritual qualities that make a woman powerful and beautiful on her own terms. The poem's narrator challenges every narrow standard of beauty and replaces it with something fiercer and more truthful. Phenomenal Woman became a rallying cry for women who had been told they were not enough. It has never stopped being read. In 1993, President Bill Clinton invited Angelou to write and read an inaugural poem, making her only the second poet in American history to read at a presidential inauguration. The first was Robert Frost 32 years earlier. She stood before the nation and read, On the Pulse of Morning. She called for peace, racial and religious harmony, and social justice. She challenged the new administration and all Americans with these words. Here on the pulse of this new day, you may have the grace to look up and out and into your sister's eyes and into your brother's face, your country, and say simply, very simply with hope, good morning. The girl who had not spoken for 5 years was now speaking to the entire nation, and the entire nation was listening. Maya Angelou received over 50 honorary degrees in her lifetime. She served on presidential committees for Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter. In 2000, she was awarded the National Medal of Arts. In 2010, President Barack Obama awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the United States. She was the first African American woman to have a screenplay produced in Hollywood. She was nominated for an Emmy Award for her performance in Roots. She was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize for her poetry collection, Just Give Me a Cool Drink of Water for Our Diiie. By 1975, she had been recognized as a spokesperson for all people committed to raising the moral standards of living in the United States. She died on the 28th of May 2014 at the age of 86. At the time of her death, she was the Reynolds Professor of American Studies at Wake Forest University. She had been teaching until the very end. A little girl in Arkansas who stopped speaking. A teenager who took the paint off cars with her bare hands to feed her son. A civil rights organizer who marched alongside Martin Luther King. A poet whose words became anthems. An inaugurator of presidents, a teacher until her last breath. Maya Angelou once wrote, I have learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. but people will never forget how you made them feel. She made the world feel seen. She made the world feel heard. She made the world feel, even in its darkest moments, that it could still rise. And that is why Maya Angelou will never stop being read, never stop being quoted, never stop being needed. If this episode moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe to Poetry Pod Central. This is episode 2 of our series, Poets Who Changed the World. New episode every week. Hit the bell icon so you never miss one. We will see you in the next one.